Lunar New Year Dragon, ink, watercolour and gouache. The outline is first sketched and inked up in water-soluble ink. I mixed a little ink into my watercolour to make the blue more pigmented. I like to create a miniature version of a larger drawing to check my colour choices work. An ATC card also makes a good mini palette, so I remember all the shades I've applied. I'm using blue rather than black as an underpainting layer for shadows. Creating different coloured shadows keeps the end colours more vibrant. Vibrancy is especially important when painting a Chinese dragon, as it will be overpainted with red, a colour which is considered lucky. So I want to keep the red pigment as pure as possible in the final stages. All the shadows and shading is done in a separate layer underneath. I've chosen a beautiful dark purple for further shading to complement the blue. The shadows will have warm and cool tones. I use warmer tones to define shape and cool to define shadow. Once the underpainting is complete, I dry it quickly with a hairdryer. When it's dry, I can add the bright yellow highlights. If it wasn't dry, the yellow could accidentally mix with the blue and turn green. But as it's dry, the blue just acts as a shadow, darkening the yellow instead. The dried purple underneath the yellow turns golden peach. Now it's time to cover it all in lucky red. As watercolour is semi-transparent, it can act as a glaze and the light can bounce through it. Painting in veils of colour means as light travels through them, they are mixed with your eyes. It increases the depth and intensity of colours. It can take your work from flat to luminous and glowing, especially when seen in natural light. This technique is one of the reasons traditional originals are still sought after. You wouldn't always know why the original has the edge, as the layers aren't always obvious. Most of the time, for speed, an artist will mix in the palette, but I do like to let the viewer's eyes do the mixings sometimes. There are so many different shades of red. When you look at something that's red, you'll see that it isn't the same shade all over. The highlighted areas could be pure white, highlighting going through pink, lavender, peach or yellow before it hits the dominant red. I'm going for a golden red, which travels from white through yellow, through orange to red. To make the transition as vibrant as possible, I'm using ink as a top glaze. Ink is simply a pigment which has no bulky filler, so it's one of the purest colours to use. I create my own ink washes by adding water to pure ink and keeping the mix in these watercolour pens. The colour you see in the pen is quite different from how it looks on paper. So I stick a paper dot to the side of the pen so you can see what the ink looks like on paper. You'd never know the ink in this pen was the brightest golden yellow. This is a beautifully rich copper orange ink brush pen. This final glazing pen brush is bright orange red. I also dip it into sample ink vials that I've created with mixes of pink red and blue red. Glazes are complete, so it's time to dry it. The last layer is jelly gouache. Mine has dried, so it doesn't look jelly anymore. It just needs to be activated by water and it's perfect to be used again. The reason you use gouache as the top layer is because it's opaque. When you layer transparent paint, it can only successfully go darker. If you tried to paint transparent white over black, it will never look pure white. White gouache, on the other hand, being opaque, goes over anything as pure white. So I like to add a pop of pure colour as highlights over the top. In darker areas, my highlights are bright red. In lighter areas, my highlights are bright pink to pure white. Once the gouache is thoroughly dry, it's time to redefine the inking lines. This pen is inked up with a dark yellow-brown ink. Lots of artists do the inking in black, but also brown and red is used for traditional inking. This is probably my favourite part of a drawing, which is why I have so many fountain pens. I tried doing this with fine liners, but they wore out too quickly. A good juicy fountain pen works best, and if you look after them, they can last your lifetime. Why does everyone like the peel-born bit? This bit frightens me the most. That's the miniature version complete. Now to check it out in natural light.